So hair is a continuous recorder. It's a tape recorder of diet. And so this hamburger that becomes part of my diet will eventually find its way into my hair. Oh, there it is. There it is. See that big red? All right. Well, I've analyzed your hair, and the real conclusion is that the carbon in your bodies really originates from corn.
From corn.
Corn.
Our 1-acre lawn would be growing a giant grass whose ancestors looked very different. Native corn originated in southern Mexico, but found a happy home in Iowa, a land of fertile soils and humid summers. Gradually, one type of corn replaced all the others, a versatile crop named yellow dent, which over time came to dominate the entire middle of the country.
Curtis and I are going to do a taste test on our corn to see how it's coming along, to see how it's tasting.
It looks good.
It looks great.
It's not very good, Ian.
Yeah.
It tastes like soda.
I think that looks like a nice corn porridge. Yeah, it's disgusting. It tastes like chalk.
I really thought it would taste better. Tastes like crap.
If you're standing in a field in Iowa, there's an immense amount of food being grown, none of it edible. The commodity corn, nobody can eat. It must be processed before we can eat it. It's a raw material. It's a feedstock for all these other processes. And the irony is that an Iowa farmer can no longer feed himself.
The mass production of corn drives the mass production of animal protein in confined operations. And you gotta have cheap feed to do the confinements.
That's my brand. I just sold these to the feedlot in March. You know, I really don't have many other alternatives.
At Sue Jarrett's cow-calf operation, we saw how cattle are raised before they go to the feedlot, eating grass on the open range. When Sue's father ran the ranch, cattle spent almost all their lives eating grass, and it took several years to reach market weight. But in recent years, cattle have begun spending more and more of their lives in feedlots.
They put on weight faster if you don't let them move. So total confinement, less space for movement. They eat continually, and you get them into the market, into the food chain. But cattle were not meant to be on a corn-fed diet for that long. You know, we used to feed them 60, 90 days was one thing. Up to 120, you could make it. You start really pushing cattle on a corn-based diet after that, the ulcers and the stomachs don't take it well, and they start getting sick.
I was wondering if it might be possible to visit a corn syrup factory sometime.
Visit in what sense?
Heard, sorry I didn't get back to you sooner. Been in and out of the office.
On camera, off camera?
On camera.
We don't allow cameras into the plants.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
The real reason for the security of these plants and food processing facilities is as much about the security of the food that's being created as it is your personal safety.
I was wondering whether it's possible to make high fructose corn syrup in my home.
Well, what, 15.5% dry moisture, how efficient your separations are. Make it acidic, separate it in the wet milling process. 1% divided by 50, leave it there for a while, counterflow water wash on it. Once you pour off all that crap, then you're going to have the goo in the bottom. You're going to have to add water in, yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. Take care. Bye. Oh my goodness, that was a marathon. All right, so step one apparently is soaking this corn in water that has been heated to 140 degrees. And we're also supposed to have put in sulfuric acid at 200 parts per million, which is a tiny parts per gallon.
0.0007.
So 7 it's not even close to a teaspoon. It's like you're gonna stick your finger in and whatever drop sticks to it.
No, man. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do that.
It's so much easier.
What we're looking for is yellow dent number 2. So it's already a certain type of corn that will yield a lot of starch.
Well, this is going to soak for 16 hours to get it soft and begin to separate the starch from the fiber. All right, day 2.
It smells sweet.
What does something sweet smell like? Sugar?
Yes.
There's a lot of technology, quote unquote, that goes into making corn sweetener.
All right, step 2, physically damage the corn.
It doesn't look like a kernel anymore at the end of the process, but that is part of that innovative system.
The endoamylase and spezyme prime enzyme randomly hydrolases alpha-1,4 glycosidic bonds to reduce the viscosity of a gelatinized starch.
Everything really is a science when you boil it down.
Wow. That's pretty sweet. It's sweet.
It tastes good.
Prior to about 1970, nobody ate high fructose corn syrup because it was too expensive to make. Today, the dominant sugar in the Western diet now comes from corn. Corn is very cheap, so it's beneficial for people that are making processed foods to sweeten their product with high fructose corn syrup because it costs them less, so they save money.
Okay, Mike.
Food and beverage manufacturers were looking for a lower cost sugar substitute. By the late 80s, we had fully taken over half of the sweetening market in the United States. High fructose corn syrup is known to enhance flavors of spices and fruits. It lessens the acidic quality of spaghetti sauces. It provides good browning properties to breads. It's all a part of a complex, innovative system that makes these foods available to us in such a variety of choices for such low prices.
Every single item I saw in this aisle contains corn syrup.
In the last 30 years, America's consumption of table sugar has fallen. But our overall consumption of sweeteners has gone up more than 30%. largely because of a dramatic increase in our consumption of high fructose corn syrup.
Everything we'd done on our acres since coming to Iowa had been designed to do one thing: grow as many bushels of corn as possible. What we hadn't realized was that what we were growing was essentially an acre of sugars.
We know some things just from the factual analytical standpoint about the corn which is grown in Iowa. It has been selected for high productivity. This means high volume starch production. Well, you never get something for nothing in the world of biophysics, and what you give up in the bargain is nutritional value.
Most of what we've done in agricultural so-called improvements and in food processing have actually degraded our food supply from a nutritional standpoint.
The corn that originally came north from Mexico was a grain with a higher protein content. But as corn was bred for higher productivity, the nature of the corn kernel was transformed.
What's happened is that increased yield has been mainly an expansion in the endosperm, or the starch fraction of the kernel of corn. And of course, now we're taking that starch and converting it to high fructose corn sweetener, which basically has no nutritional value, only adverse metabolic effects and empty calories.
For each kernel of our corn turned into high fructose corn syrup, there's a nearly 70% chance it will end up sweetening a beverage, likely headed for a big city far from the Corn Belt. In Brooklyn, New York, about 139 million gallons of soda are consumed each year, sweetened by 20,000 acres of corn.
Boruga, ¿cómo está Boruga? ¿Está lento la cosa o qué?
Así mero, así mero.
Yeah, right now we are at Fifth Avenue Park Slope, Brooklyn, New York.
And you grew up here?
Grew up right in this neighborhood. Was born in Methodist Hospital.
We've been growing this acre of corn in Iowa and trying to figure out where the corn will go when it leaves our farm. And so we've been following the story of corn syrup.
Tell you what, just stopping into a bodega and buying a bottle of soda. It doesn't matter if it's a Pepsi or Coke or, it doesn't matter. Any soda product contains corn syrup. There's a soda, I don't know if they still have it out. It was called Colonial Grape. That had to be the sweetest grape soda I ever drank. I don't know if it had more sugar or more corn syrup than any other one, but I drank up to 2 liters a day, maybe more.
One of the great changes in the American food supply during the last 20 years is that we are now drinking many more calories than we were before. And there does seem to be something about drinking calories in the form of soda, for example, that just doesn't generate the stop signals.
I actually never thought that soda would be a large problem to drink, but I could show you a picture over here. The way I used to be, I used to weigh over 300 pounds. That's me right there. I was a size 60 in pants, and I stopped drinking soda, and just by not drinking soda, I lost about a third of what I weighed, you know.
We have an explosion of obesity. That's probably the most conspicuous symptom of the nutritional crisis occurring in America. But the obesity is only just part of it. High consumption of sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup has quite adverse metabolic effects. And what we see in our long-term studies is higher risk of type 2 diabetes as well. In a recent analysis, we found that drinking 1 soda per day on average almost doubled the risk of type 2 diabetes compared to only occasionally having a soda beverage or not at all.
My dad, he had a pain in his toe for over 6 months, and he found out he was diabetic that way. And they cut his big toe off. And before my father died, it went from his toe to his foot to below the knee to above the knee, and then he wanted to start cutting on the other leg. My dad said no, that was enough, and he just gave up. My mom died of a direct result of diabetes. My grandmother died a direct result of diabetes. My sister Madeline, she's been a diabetic for years. I was recently diagnosed with diabetes. We don't think of what we're putting into our system. We don't really think about it.
By the end of September, we'd been corn farmers for almost 9 months. It was becoming clear that our acre wasn't just a game for seeing where food came from. We were growing an actual crop that was destined to be eaten by actual people.
If you take that meal, you take that McDonald's meal, you don't realize it when you eat it, but you're eating corn. Beef has been corn-fed. Soda is corn. It's all high fructose corn syrup. It's the main ingredient. Even the French fries, which are, half the calories in the French fries come from the fat that they're fried in, and that fat is liable to be corn oil or soy oil. And so when you're at that McDonald's, you're eating Iowa food. Everything on your plate is corn.